Good morning. I think this is all, yeah, this is all working all right. So, good morning, good morning. Tom from Big Tom. A video for driving instructors or trainee driving instructors. And this is to build on the blog I did a couple of days ago. I am a man of my word. I do what I say. Not everybody loves reading blogs, do they? And this is a point about the way we present our information to our pupils, a variety of different ways. And if for anyone who's watching this, you may be one of these people that prefer to watch someone saying something rather than reading it on a blog, and I really get that. So that's what this is for, to try and give a bit more of a sort of human touch to the message here. And the ultimate message here is all about how we are assisting our pupils to have a base foundation, a sort of very good foundation of information that they can readily recall, in order for us to then build on that and build layers of experience and learning as well, so that we're trying to develop a pupil who has the ability to evaluate how they're getting on and analyze what's working and not working, and continue to learn once they've passed their test, to continue learning. As opposed to what? Well, as opposed to a driving instructor whose point of view is that, I'm such a fabulous driver, and all I've got to do is just get my drivers to drive like me because I'm so good. And once they're copying what I do, my driving actions, then they will be as good as me. And it's an alternative approach to that way of thinking. And why do we need an alternative approach? Well, everything is tending to suggest to us that this way of doing driving instruction, where you want your pupil to mimic you, is very superficial. There's no depth to the learning, because you are in effect getting them to copy your driving actions, as opposed to developing their driving mind. And a good driver is a thinking driver, and if you don't pay attention to how they're thinking and how they're learning, and the skills required for good driving from a mental point of view, you're not tapping into that resource, then that's a big opportunity lost for continued learning and continued improvement, later on as they go through. Do remember that, not everybody, there are people in history that didn't start off fabulously well in their schooling, and went on to become notable. Our history shows that they were significant people in our history. Their achievements and what they managed to bring along, what they managed to develop themselves. They didn't start off fabulously well, but they had something inside them, a foundation in which they could then continue to improve. And it's an important point. It's really a key point. And let me give you a practical example. If you were trying to learn chess moves, strategy of chess, but you didn't have the basics of the chess piece moves. Yeah, so sorry, let me rephrase that. If you're trying to improve your chess game with the strategy and the tactics, considering trying to improve your tactical ability and your mid-game, if you know anything about chess, openings, mid-game, end-game, and you wanted to but you don't have the fundamentals of how the chess pieces move and their value and their pros and cons of each of the chess pieces, you can't go on to that next bit of development and improvement if you haven't got that basis to start off with. In sport, I would say if you were trying to become a better break builder in snooker, you would struggle if you didn't have the basics of cue control, being able to control where the cue ball is going on the snooker table. If you didn't have that ability to do that, you would struggle to build breaks and your break building and selection of the right options as to what to do. You can't think about your options if you haven't got the basics, and it's in that's the sort of thrust of really where I'm coming from. So try to look at this video. I mean, this video, I should sort of just take time out for a second and just explain, that what we're going through here this morning is no different. This style of doing things, it's no different to what happens on the foundation, the driving instructor training, big time foundation blocks. The elements that are in there. This is a very, very effective way of taking stock, getting ourselves a coffee, pen and paper if you want it, getting yourself a coffee. I haven't got myself a coffee here. Relaxing for a second, taking time out, stepping back, thinking about how we are actually going about our business on a day-to-day, in a day-to-day sort of working, how we are actually conducting ourselves, and how we are, what service we are providing to our customers, how effective it is. This does not do any harm. This is all very, very good thing to do, and it doesn't just stop when you when you get to say 30 or even when you've qualified. You don't then stop learning. The idea is to, always reminds me when I think of this, of my old man's display of books he's got. It's phenomenal. It's really, and you look at all of these books and you think, Struth, in a way it's kind of threatening. It's overwhelming when you think, oh, Struth, no way I'd be able to read all those books. And of course, no one's going to read all those books. But he started sort of 30, 40 years ago, and he's been plodding along throughout his life. And he's now 70, and with the passing of time, you build up that, and it's that kind of mentality as we go through our careers and our working life, is that we're continually. It's almost like what you would be doing in financial terms with your pensions and putting away, kind of keep doing that on the learning side of things, and keep investing in yourself, and just drip, just keep on adding, and you get better, and it's all very positive. It's very, very positive for you personally. Now, I'm not sure how I went off on that little tangent there, but so that's this is the style in which you can engage with your driving instructor training. It's non-threatening. It's very low risk in terms of wasting your time and money, and you can refer to it. It's all recorded, so you can refer to it. You can keep going back, because that's an important learning technique in itself. How you go about retrieving the knowledge that you've been made aware of, is definitely has an impact on how well you learn it. And so having a resource that is recorded, and then you can then go back to remind yourself of it. So in order to firm up on the key learning points is really, really effective in a learning point. And don't lose sight of that with your pupils as well. If they're not memorizing things, they're not learning. and how we as driving instructors assist them to remember these key concepts of road safety, how we do that so that they can recall it and retrieve. It is in the recalling and the retrieving of the information that assists the learning. So, you know, we need to bear that in mind when we're speaking to our when we're working with our pupils. So, coming on to what I wanted to do. So this is giving you an opportunity to have a look, sit back, relax, and just think about for a second what you are doing on a day-to-day basis, how you are interacting with your pupils, that offers them an opportunity to learn in a more in-depth way, that goes beyond just sort of driving actions. Driving actions is a very superficial way of looking at this. This is how mums and dads would do it, wouldn't it? Oh, you know, don't do that, do this. That's how. But we're, as professionals, you know, this is worth us knowing about and thinking about and seeing how it relates to us personally, and thinking how we can improve our style of assisting with our pupils in their needs and their learning needs. And let me give you just a really practical example here. And when I give you this practical example, please please don't fall into the trap of thinking that what you are about to be immersed in is a mathematical puzzle of some sort, or this is a test of your mathematical ability. It's really not. The point behind what I'm about to say is to try to get over to you this concept of a foundation of learning, and then building layers of learning, so that the experience your pupils receive is actually adding learning onto a firm base. That's the point about this. It's not about you personally and how good you are at maths. Right? And let me just throw something out off the top of my head. Let's say if I asked you to consider multiplying 5 by 67. 5 multiplied by 67 on top of your head. Don't go for that device or gadget. Just think about that. 5 multiplied by 67. And get that in your head for a second. And let me just talk through that for a sec. 67. So 5 multiplied by 67. 67 in your head, 67. So 5 times 7, 35. So 35, 3 and then 5. 5 multiplied by 6 is 30. Add your 3, 335. 335. So 335. That would be my first kind of. However, let's do 60. So we've got 67, and 67 multiplied by 5. So let's do 60. So 5 times 60 is 300. Let's do 7. 5 times 7 is 35. 300 plus 35, 335. So let's just go over that again. 5 times 7 is 35. 5 times 6 is 30. Add your 3, 33, 335. Now, you may, that may mean something, it may not at all. Two kind of different ways of looking at that. But what was the common theme in both cases? How I achieved that end result? What was the common theme that was a necessary ingredient of that way of coming to that solution? what did I have to have in my in my idea to be able to achieve that, coming to that solution, that answer. And what I needed was, I needed to have instant recall to be able to retrieve the multiplication. In that case, what we were doing, 67, didn't I? 67 and 5. So I had to have in my head the ability, you could say the 5 times table, or you could say 6 or 7 times table, you know, but that was a necessity, wasn't it? Because if I didn't have the ability to instantly recall the multiplication times table, I couldn't visualize. Did you notice as I was going through that, I actually had numbers in my head. I was looking up one night, numbers in my head, and I'm doing that, and I'm doing that, and the 5 goes over there. And, so I'm visualizing as I'm working through it. Of course, if I'd have gone like this and gone, right, so 67 times 5, so 5 sevens, 5 sevens, 5 sevens. If I don't know what 5 sevens are, 7 fives, 5 sevens, I'm kind of doomed, aren't I, really? I've kind of fallen at the first hurdle because I don't have that base knowledge, that foundation in which to then carry on that calculation. And so I can't juggle around figures in my head, and I can't come up with mental arithmetic on a day-to-day basis. Always reminds me, I've mentioned it in the blog before, about the apprentice and that lass who couldn't give the customer, she was on a market stall on The Apprentice, and she couldn't give the customer change of a £20 note. She literally couldn't do it. She had to, oh really? Oh, £20? Oh gosh, Truth, hold on then, I'm going to have to get a calculator somewhere. Have I got a calculator on somewhere? Or, oh, what about my phone? And the customer's looking at her like, blimey, can't you just give me change? And there she is with the degree's coming out of her head. But I'm sort of digressing. What I'm trying to get at is that the foundation is there in which to then, you can then build on that. And you can then be able to further do things, further expand on these ideas, because you have got that baseline. And that baseline is really where I'm coming from when it comes to our pupils and learning to drive. They need to have the basics in their head, their mind, about the key stuff in which they can then stand any hope at all of further improving. And I'm talking in terms of mental and physical stuff. So you know, the mental stuff would be your stuff that they're going through, you know, like your separation gaps, and you know, the priorities, who's got priorities, and the convention of roundabouts. And you know, roundabouts is quite a good example, really, because if you don't have in your mind how roundabouts go in terms of positions, falling back on your mirrors, signal position to come off of a roundabout, if you don't have these key basics about which way am I going around the roundabout, if I'm going around to the right, where would I normally position? If you don't have all of that to fall back on, it's very difficult as a base knowledge. It's very difficult to then actually build on that in a sensible way, in a meaningful way when you're driving. But it's not just that side, it's also the practical side of, you know, let's think about things like your clutch control. That would be a good example of clutch control, where you do need an understanding of what that really does mean, you know, clutch control, and how it is achieved with the feet, so that you can then, once you've got that base knowledge and that ability, you can then apply this into other situations, scenarios, when you are driving around. Because if the pupil doesn't have that to fall back on, when they end up coming up to a hill, they're not recognising they're on let's say an incline. They're not recognising they're on an upward hill, for starters. They're not, so therefore that's not triggering, it's not prompting anything in their heads. So therefore when, say it's a red traffic light or slow moving traffic, or even pools that are queue of traffic, and when they go to move off and they set a handbrake off, they're rolling back because things aren't happening. There isn't that stuff in the baseline in which to then build on. It's massively important, really. So what I would say to you is that with the Big Tom driving instructor training foundation blocks that are being offered to you, much in this kind of way here, in this format here, in this style, which are recorded so you can refer to them later on. What's being offered here is a way in which you can go beyond, think beyond this sort of very superficial way of driving instructor driving training with your pupils, whereby your pupil sits in the driver's seat and you just blurb what you are wanting them to do, and so that they just do what you're saying, and they're not really being able to appreciate the point behind it, what you're doing with them, and how that works into the overall plan, strategy of the learning program. If you don't pay any attention to that whatsoever, if you don't give your pupils any knowledge about that side of things at all, then it's kind of one-dimensional. It's very superficial, and it just becomes a relationship of you tell me what to do, and I will just do it, and I'm not really thinking about anything. I'm just really just doing what you say. I don't even know why I'm doing it. I don't know why I'm doing it, but you're telling me, and I'm doing it. You're telling me to do mirrors, and that is, unfortunately, and it is very unfortunate. That is what happens very easily. It's a very easy trap to fall into, incredibly easy trap to fall into, whereby your pupil is not giving very much thought at all. That the learning is very it doesn't have meaning. It's not meaningful learning. They don't actually relate to it. They can't engage in any way whatsoever with the concepts of what you're saying, because you're not actually portraying the learning in a manner. There's no structure to your learning program, and the driving standard talks about this. This is a very, very important point. This is, the DVSA want to see evidence that you are actually doing things in a structured way that provides meaningful learning to your customers, so that the customer doesn't just do certain robotic driving actions on a driving test, pass their driving test, and then just keep on going, and they find themselves in some very, very awkward situations. If a pupil is purely taught how to pass a test in a given location, then I speak from experience here. I do cover 4 or 5 test centres, and I know for sure that if a pupil was only to be taught in a certain area, a certain location, that is purely focused on them taking a driving test in one test centre in that area, then that is going to severely restrict the depth of their learning to equip them for being able to drive in other locations with other different characteristics that happen, in other locations. So I go back to the driving standard because this is where they're talking about the breadth of the training to ensure that people are being equipped, not just in terms of their ability, but their confidence in being able to drive anywhere, anywhere really. So it's all, there's a point behind all of this, you know. It might seem like I'm throwing this all together, but there is actually a point to it all, in terms of the driving standard, and the DVSA. I should talk about the DVSA, the driving standard, the driving instructor, the DVSA and the driving instructor standards checks, the DVSA and our pupils, the candidate for driving tests, and what I'm referring to here is our interaction with our customers, our pupils, in terms of their way that they are learning. And it's all actually linked together, connected together, and all of us really would do well to appreciate that fact, so that we are providing good standards of learning. So that's really, in a nutshell, you know, that is basically what I wanted to get over, really, for today anyway. I mean, there is more to, clearly, obviously, you know, there's more to this, because we can get on to techniques that are available that assist our pupils in this particular strategy of assisting them to learn. And we can talk about different techniques that are available to assist them. But to be quite honest with you, on this video, but sort of building on the blog from a couple of days ago, I wanted to just actually put the case forward to you in your mind that actually raises your awareness of the need to even be considering this, because that's the bit that is not necessarily, depending on lots of factors really, but it's not necessarily going to be all that obvious to everybody, and so, you know, that's what I wanted to do here. Hope that is useful. Obviously, if there's any questions at all, you could either bung it on this blog here, or alternatively give us a call here at Big Tom, and we're always going to be more than happy to assist people. I had a chap at the weekend, lovely guy, George, and he rang me up and he said to me, Tom, I don't know if you can help me. So he sounded like he was, I would estimate, probably 65-ish, somewhere out there. And bless him, he'd had a while ago a bad accident on a Peterborough roundabout, and he'd gone through the internet and he'd come across one of my videos, and so he rang me up and he was asking for confirmation of his actions, what he'd actually done, and it was in relation to this foreign driver of a lorry and this accident that happened on the roundabout, and it was all very, and I was very, very happy to talk that through with him. He's not a driving instructor. He's obviously just come across the videos, you know, and wanted to he wanted that sort of confirmation that what he thought he'd done was actually correct and, you know, technical sort of, you know, sometimes in life we need that, don't we? We need to be able to sort of know, I think I'm doing the right thing here. I think I'm doing the right thing here, but am I doing the right thing here? You know, and sometimes that bit of direction is really, really beneficial to all of us. When none of us, there's nobody that will not help, you know, at some point in there. And this is really where the foundation blocks are very, very useful, because it's not just about the teaching methodology. You know, there is also foundation blocks relating to the running of the business, you know, because it can be quite running a driving school can be quite a isolating sort of experience, and you obviously there is chit chat on well, both in test centres as well as chit chat on Facebook pages, driving instructor Facebook pages and forums and stuff like that. But you know what you get when what I'm offering here is you're in speaking in confidence. You're able to sort of open up in a way that you would not be able to do publicly when there's your peers around, because you wouldn't want to be, quite naturally, quite instinctively, people don't like to expose their I was going to say insecurities, the bits that they're not sure about. Hold on a minute, have I got that right? Do I need to put a signal on? What times do I? Oh, blimey, and what about, do I accept cancellations last minute, or don't I? Do I need terms and conditions, or don't I? And my website, is it a good idea to? I mean, will Google penalise me if I do such and such, or won't they? And these are all really key things to, and you might know someone well enough to mention these things in the test centre, or just to give them a call. But it's nice to have something to fall back on, and that's where this driving instructor training is really, really useful. And it's not, as I've mentioned before, it's not myself giving a theoretical point of view that, well, I've been in the training industry now 10 years. I don't do any, I don't actually give any sort of driving lessons. I haven't done that now for 10 years, but because I've been busy training driving instructors, and this is I've got all the theory till the cows come home, because that's, I've got me degrees and me da-da-das and the certificates and the blum da blum da blah da da. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm running a very successful driving school, and the stuff that I'm actually talking about is really bang on the button right now. It's relevant for the pupils that we are all dealing with right now, and it's assisting you with knowing what the DVSA are expecting right now. It's not theoretical. And so that's I personally think that's a very, very important point, because yes, whilst I'm not for 1 second suggesting that improving your theoretical knowledge of things, academic, qualifications and certificates, I'm not for 1 second saying that's not a good thing, not in the slightest. That's got to be a good thing. But there does come a point where the real benefit, the real value, is when you are able to practically use techniques and skills that are going to be benefiting your driving school. And whether we be talking about pupils there, or whether we're talking about actual practical things in terms of your business, with websites, social media, terms and conditions, processing of payments, customer feedback, key, very important activities that need to be done well, properly, legal stuff that needs to be complied with, and in today's market. That's my point, and that's really where I'm able to offer that to my customers here, the likes of yourself. I'm able to offer that because I am in amongst all of that right now. I really am. Look at the sensitivity around data collection and retrieval, and making sure that the personal details that are being recorded of customers is being done in a proper way. this is just a quick example of something that's coming out in the springtime, and everybody needs to be really, really up on this. This is just one example that I can think of straight away off the top of my head. How we as driving schools deal with personal data and sensitive personal data of our customers is really, really important to know, not just think, know that you're doing it the right way. Safeguarding, look at safeguarding, that's just another one that just comes, I mean, absolutely bang on the button, right here and now. That is very relevant to us. It's not we're not talking about a theoretical thing that goes, a certificate that hangs on the wall, and that's not where we are. We're talking about here, we're talking about knowledge and techniques which we can use and adapt and develop in our driving schools on a daily basis, which makes sure we are complying with the law, and it makes sure we are doing the best for our customers. That's really what this is all about. Anyway, gone off right on a tangent there. Any questions at all, please come through to me. Okay, thanks.